Well, with more, we're now joined by the Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Premier, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin with a comment that you made in your news conference that this MOU essentially gives Alberta the opportunity to show the world that the solution for reducing emissions is not about capping production. There will be, people who hear that and be a bit skeptical. So walk us through how this agreement, which does include prioritizing a new pipeline, go hand in hand with carbon reduction.
Well, I can tell you that we've had a good group of companies. They call themselves the Pathways Alliance. There are 6 largest oil sands producers. And several years ago, they charted out a pathway to become carbon neutral by 2050. Part of it is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Part of it is building interties with other provinces so that we can bring in hydropower or nuclear power. And part of it is direct air capture. And we've got 10 demonstration projects going on right now in central Alberta. But we all knew that you need enough time horizon for some of those technologies to be implemented at scale so that they can start working. And that's part of the problem that we had with the approach the federal government was taking. They were just trying to move too far, too fast, which would have resulted in our production being shut in. Now, with the agreement that we have today, I think we're going to be able to develop technology that will not only be a market on its own to export to the world, but will also be able to continue producing the heavy oil that we have that is sought after around the world.
And to that, I do also want to talk about the pipeline, because in this MOU, there's no route that's been laid out. So will that pipeline necessarily follow the path of what was the proposed Northern Gateway, or are you willing to entertain another route to the Pacific Coast?
Well, we have had a conversation with the Haisla Nation, and we have had a conversation with other nations in the Port-au-Prince, Rupert area. I think that there's lots of reasons of cost that you might want to go to Kitimat, but there's lots of good technical reasons why you'd also want to go to Port-au-Prince, Rupert. So we're looking at those as potential options. We don't want to prejudge what the outcome might be. That's what our technical assessment is going to be about. We've got all of the big pipeline companies at the table helping us to chart that. And our intention is to have a project that we can put forward to the Major Project Office for consideration by July of next year. So we're in the phase right now of engagement, which will move to more formal consultation, and ultimately Indigenous equity ownership once we identify the route that makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm. How close are you to finding a private proponent for this pipeline? Is there a company that's just been waiting in the wings for this MOU to happen?
Well, a lot closer today than we were yesterday. Part of the way pipelines get built is that you've got confidence among producers, and so when a pipeline company goes out and says, who's willing to put barrels on this pipeline, that's when they come forward. Well, our pipeline producers didn't have that confidence because they were being told that by 2030 or 2035, they'd have to shut in likely 2 million barrels a day of production. That's why removing the emissions cap was so important. That was a precondition for us getting the confidence back in the energy sector. And I suspect that there's going to be a lot of boards of directors that are doing some analysis of old projects that they want to dust off to see if they can bring them back on stream. And so that to me is the big victory we had today, is the removal of the emissions cap, the removal of the clean electricity regs applying to Alberta. And that should allow for our producers to have the confidence to attract that capital. That's what this has all been about. And once that occurs, then we have the conversation with our pipeline companies about which one or a consortium of them might come forward to build the pipeline to new Asian markets.
Okay, so a big victory in your own words there, but you know, using your own words as well, you said that this MOU represents a first step, and that trust still has to be built and earned. So with that in mind, I do wonder, was it a mistake to have moved ahead with this MOU without first engaging British Columbia and other First Nations in northern British Columbia?
Well, most of the elements of this arrangement apply to Alberta. Like the CER carve-out is for Alberta. The emissions cap on oil and gas mostly impacted Alberta. The greenwashing provisions mostly impacted our oil and gas companies. And so there's a lot of the things that are in this that really are Alberta-based. And the Pathways, a group of companies as well, that's an Alberta-based project. The issue, of course, around a bitumen pipeline, that's federal jurisdiction. That has been litigated as federal jurisdiction. Trade and commerce power, it's federal jurisdiction. The ports, our federal jurisdiction. And so we had the right entity at the table. And now we're going to commence more formal consultation with the nations and as well with British Columbia. I've already had another call with Premier Eby yesterday so that we can talk about the areas where we agree. We're not going to agree on everything, but we do have a number of things that we can work on together with the interties, with nuclear, with ammonia, with expanded LNG infrastructure, with the expansion of the Trans Mountain pipeline capacity. So I think that there's a lot to build on from there.
Okay, I do want to ask about that phone call with Premier Eby. I'm wondering if you're starting off on the wrong foot, though, for not having engaged him earlier.
I would say I called him right off the bat when I told him that we were going to be the proponent of a pipeline project. He knew that. And in every interview I've done, I have been very transparent that I had a negotiating team, as did the federal government, that was working towards an MOU that would address the 9 bad laws, as well as the issue of the pathways and a bitumen project. So we were being very open publicly about the fact that we were doing that. And now that the federal government and Alberta has reached an agreement in principle, that's when we're going to continue in earnest to try to find that route and get more buy-in as we begin to talk with Indigenous nations about what their equity stake might be. So I feel optimistic. Obviously, anytime you have an issue, you're not going to get 100% agreement on 100% of the issues, but we've got to work through it one by one, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that now.
Okay, we will speak again. As you say, this is just the first step, but on a very busy day. Thank you for the time, Premier Smith.
Thank you.